Hello, everybody. Welcome to Point Counterpoint. I am Dr. B, and I am joined by Dr. P today. And we have some very controversial stuff to share with you. There was a cool study published in this month's headache journal. And it caught my eye because it is data that was published about an app that I actually used called Curelator N1. They kind of also called it. I just knew it as Curelator though. So I had people coming into my office and saying, hey, there's this really cool new app where you can track your triggers and share the information with your doctor. Will you sign up? I signed up and it was interesting. So what you had to do is pick your triggers, like identify maybe 5 or 10 things that you think are triggers for you, and then track them every day, and then say whether or not you had a headache. And I just got lazy and I quit, basically. So my results are not in this study, but they published data that they've got so far from 1,125 people. They tracked 14,000 migraine attacks. So I think this is very interesting data. So let me tell you why I think it is interesting. Okay. So they looked at all of the stuff, all the numbers that they got from people using this app. Okay. And what I find is interesting is that things that I think of as migraine triggers were actually found to be protective. Also, stuff we think of as being typically healthy lifestyle stuff, not so much. And some things that I really focus on that I think are important that have been game changers for me turned out to be actually really important triggers. So here we go. Things that you think are triggers, but they turned out not to be. Caffeine. Okay, I can buy that one. What do you think, Dr. P? Do you buy that one?
Yeah, I'm going to have you read through the list and then I'll give my perspective on what this data is actually telling these people.
Cool. Okay. So caffeine, alcohol, chocolate, salty foods, nuts, and onions. These were all foods that were actually protective. They were not triggers. So let's start with the food piece.
Okay. And just to clarify, because I had this question, what they were saying, how they are coming up with the fact that it was protective is that the person would eat it and then they wouldn't have a migraine that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So they would eat it and it was correlated with no migraine. When they wouldn't eat it, it was correlated with a migraine.
Yep.
Okay.
So why do you think that's happening? What is the link between chocolate, caffeine, alcohol, salty foods, nuts, and onions?
All right. So I always break down when people suspect a trigger or when people eat something and it causes them to not have a migraine, that both of those things can tell us a lot of information about that individual. And we know that there are dozens and dozens of things that are correlated with increased migraine frequency and intensity, right? Like hormone changes and weather changes and things. Like we understand some of the physiology behind what's causing the migraine to come out of those biochemical imbalances. And so what I look for is the pattern between all of these different things. So when I hear onion is actually protective, I think onion is high in sulfur. Sulfur is essential to make glutathione, which is our most potent antioxidant. Migraineurs are already correlated with less with antioxidant depletion. So when they eat something like onion that's high in sulfur, then their body is able to make more antioxidants, which then helps to prevent the migraine for that day. They're doing better from a detox standpoint for that 24-hour period. When I hear caffeine will increase both cortisol and our catecholamine neurotransmitters, both when they're low or when they drop, are correlated with migraines. So it makes sense to me that both of those would be protective in the fact that it's helping to keep the cortisol and the catecholamine levels more stable. Alcohol is an interesting one because alcohol itself, the ethanol, not, the wine that has the sulfites or, some of the colorings in maybe Fireball or something like that. We're talking about like probably vodka or gin, some things that's pretty clean, usually a clear alcohol. But the ethanol itself, which is the part that we actually get drunk off of, Ethanol is an NMDA receptor antagonist, which is a fancy way of saying it blocks glutamate. So when somebody has a trigger that is glutamine, glutamate, MSG, things like that, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that MSG will give me an instant headache, they usually have a problem with processing glutamate in their body. A shot of alcohol will help these people because it's helping to block the glutamate's ability to react in the brain, which then will block the migraine that happens as a result. So I can totally see that. And in fact, in our program, that's actually one of the things that we have our clients try, is to do like a half a shot of a clear vodka or something when they have a migraine, to see if this is something that works for them. And if it does, then we know, hey, we've got an issue with NMDA, with glutamate, with GABA, and we need to focus in on this. So it's actually a little way to tell if that's a problem for them. Now, I don't think red wine is probably the same, and I don't know if they differentiate. Did they differentiate the type of alcohol?
No, they didn't
Okay.
at all. They just said alcohol as a
Yeah.
general category.
So that's pretty broad. Like a lot of people, I mean, I know that certain types of red wine will give me an instant headache. And the minute I stop it, I'll actually go and have like a half a shot of vodka, and it will take my headache away. So I know that there's some, I know it's pretty interesting.
Wow.
I've learned which alcohols I can enjoy and which ones not so much. But yeah, so I mean, it is very interesting. And then that can also help to guide us in understanding, okay, if alcohol helps you, like the clear alcohol without the other stuff confounding it, then we know, hey, maybe a medication like say it for me.
Memantine?
Memantine, thank you, which is an
Remember that?
NMDA antagonist, might be a helpful option for you, which can be used in migraines, but it's just not a commonly thought of. It's not a first or even second round choice for migraines. But we can use that alcohol response as say, hey, this worked. Why don't we look at an NMDA blocker to see if that can be helpful in managing those frequent migraines? So yeah, so that's kind of where I go when I hear these different triggers that were actually protective, is looking at the biochemistry behind those foods, how it's affecting the body chemistry, and then understanding how we can apply that to a successful treatment.
Cool. Well, thank you for taking us on that glance into the science behind why they may have found that those foods are actually protective. So, I mean, there's almost sort of saying those things could be part of a healthy lifestyle for people with headaches. I think one of the other things that they thought was interesting here is they sort of looked at what we think of as a healthy lifestyle. So let me read you the list. Regular sleep, regular meals, adequate hydration, and regular exercise, defined as more than 3 times a week. Okay, so first of all, hardly anybody did this. Only 2% of the people in this study had a healthy lifestyle. So that's not very many. So even if this is the way to have an impact on your lifestyle, on your migraines, nobody's doing it. And they actually did not find that it created a very powerful impact on reducing migraine frequency and severity. So I thought that was super interesting. The things people followed through on the most were regular meals and adequate hydration. That makes total sense to me. It's very easy.
Yeah.
It is much harder to exercise, especially when you have head pain. And it's harder sometimes to get to sleep on time, or I'm worried about something and then I can't fall asleep, or I wake up in the middle of the night. Like that's just harder to control, but it's very easy to say, oh yeah, I've got to eat now. It's because of my migraines.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we may be changing our definition of what a healthy lifestyle looks like if you have migraine. Any thoughts on that, Dr. P?
Oh, so many thoughts, so many thoughts. This is where I think our first counterpoint for in a long time will come into play. So, I just have questioned with how they did the lifestyle. If only 2% of that group are actually doing it, I mean, that speaks in and of itself, right? Like the amount of dedication somebody is having towards that, which is very hard. Like lifestyles changes are probably the hardest changes that a migraineur needs to go through, in my opinion. But, then we're taking our 1,000 group sample and we're taking 2% of that. And that's what we're saying is a moderate effect. Like, I don't know that I buy the numbers with that, and what does somebody's idea of a healthy lifestyle? Like, I don't know if because I didn't read through how they defined that, or if they even did in the article. but what does that exactly look like? What kind of diet are they following? What kind of, what is their sleep schedule looking like? So, that might, a quote unquote healthy lifestyle changes might be completely different from one of those 2% to another person in that 2%. And so unless we've got kind of a standard definition that everybody's following, I don't think it's fair to say that healthy lifestyle is not a positive, does not have a positive impact on migraines.
Yeah, really good point. So just to clarify, I'll read here. They defined so it's regular sleep, regular meals, adequate hydration, and regular exercise.
Right,
So
but what does that all mean?
Yeah.
What does adequate hydration mean?
Well, okay, they defined it as dehydration not present.
Well.
That's pretty non-specific, right?
That is pretty non-specific.
I think we can find fault with that one. Sleep was a little better. Sleep duration between 7 and 9 hours. I think we can all agree that's reasonable. Regular meals is defined as avoiding skipping meals. I'm guessing they just said breakfast, lunch, dinner. And exercise was definitely the hardest one. That was 3 times a week. So the 2% number, that was just people who followed all 4 of those more than 80% of the time. So very few people were successful at following all those, but they did look at things like, does eating your meals regularly, how profound of an impact does that have on your headaches? Not much. How,
but I'd argue, well, what are they eating? If you're eating a McDonald's fast food meal, that's not going to show much. Yeah. So, I mean, those are the problems that I have with their assessment that healthy lifestyle choices don't impact.
Yeah.
Migraine. Yeah.
And they didn't define it very much. I mean, they're just saying regular meals is all. They didn't go into at all what people were eating. But I think there is a common perception that if you skip a meal, that can be a migraine trigger. So that's what they were looking at. And they did not actually find that skipping meals was much of a migraine trigger. So go keto. I mean, or intermittent fasting. I mean, well, and I think that's probably too much to extrapolate from the study.
Yeah. Well, and I also think about, not skipping meals. What the problem with that as being a trigger is it's actually a blood sugar issue, right? So then we have to look a little bit more. Okay. Is there insulin resistance in one part of the group that's included and not in another part? And so that's skewing the data a little bit. So, apparently I'm being devil's advocate. It's not that I hate this study. I find it very interesting. I just want to make that clear. I'm not trying to tear it apart, but I think I'm just such a big advocate for those healthy lifestyle changes that part I want to tear apart when it says that there's not really any correlation, because I don't want people to be like, oh, well, then forget that. I'm not going to eat healthy and I'm not going to go to sleep regularly if I don't have to.
Yeah, I totally get that. On the other hand, they did find a couple of things that were very powerful migraine triggers that I don't know that we necessarily have, that it's the common perception out there that these are the 3 most powerful migraine triggers, period, bar none. It's what they found in this study. So, I mean, it's only one study and all that, and it's a correlation. It's not a randomized controlled trial. So all those caveats that this is just asking people questions and trying to make sense of what they say. But I love this one because this so resonates with my own personal experience that the most powerful migraine trigger was neck pain, which is absolutely my experience. And that is why yoga and meditation are so important to me as treatments for headaches. Next most common, eye strain. How fixable is that? Shall we put our devices down? Maybe. Perhaps.
Oh, I have something I want to come back to that I think would be very helpful.
Okay. And then I just want to go over the third thing, tiredness or fatigue. So definitely fatigue was a very, very prominent and powerful trigger for headaches, even, regardless of what they're finding about whether or not regular sleep was a healthy, a preventive measure. But I think nobody needs to tell us numbers about sleep. Everybody who has migraines absolutely knows from their own experience that number 1, if you have a headache, you often want to sleep. That often helps. Number 2, if you get a bad night's sleep, that will definitely increase your chance of headache. So I don't care what the study says on that. I'm not going to compromise on that. But the neck pain really, neck pain really surprised me that was the most powerful trigger for migraines that they found in the study.
I could totally see that. I'm not going to try to tear any of those three down because I 100% agree with all of them as being huge triggers for people for sure. I wanted to though come back to the eye strain piece because this is probably a couple of years ago now. But I went to the eye doctor and it was new. She was a new eye doctor. I hadn't been to see her before. And she had me do this really weird machine thing. And I was like, that's bizarre. What was that? So me being me, I'm like, what did you have me do? I've never done this before. And she said, oh, I'm screening you for eye misalignment. I was like, oh, eye misalignment. Tell me about that. And she's like, well, it's really, really common. People with headaches and, this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, wait a minute. Because they had me do this questionnaire. And because of how I answered, apparently she wanted to screen me for this. So I was like, tell me a little bit more about how this eye misalignment, and essentially what it is the small muscles of your eyes have to work when we have a misalignment, which basically means like when we're looking at the computer, our eyes naturally try to focus behind it. And in order to focus on the computer screen, our little eye muscles have to work hard. And the longer we're working hard at trying to adjust to that screen in front of us, when naturally we want to be looking behind it, then that will actually trigger trigeminal inflammation and, head and neck pain. And so she was explaining this process to me. And I was like, that is fascinating. So I did some more research, and sure enough, there's a huge correlation with people with eye strain and when a lot of computer work, or when you sit and read for a long time, if any of those things will trigger a migraine, that's a huge red flag to go get screened for eye misalignment. And there are only certain ophthalmologists, right? Which
Those
is
are
the
the
one.
MD ones. Yeah.
Yes. There are only a handful of ophthalmologists that have this ability because there's a special machine that they use to do it. But essentially you're looking into it and it's just doing its weird eye measurements, whatever. I think there were like little fish floating across the screen, and how I was looking at and what I was looking at was telling them where my eyes were aligning naturally. And so there are special glasses called prism glasses that you can have done to correct this misalignment. And I've had clients, when we've screened, it seems like this is an issue. They go find somebody who can screen them for that particular thing with their device. And when they get the prism glasses, after they've had an adjustment period, which takes about 2 weeks, their headaches went from like 5 or 6 times a week, at work, to maybe once every couple of weeks. I mean, it was that dramatic for them. So I just wanted, in case somebody isn't aware of that, I wanted to share that. There's a website called neurolens.com, I think. Neurolens is they're the people who make the prism glasses, and they have a questionnaire on there. And so you can go in there, you can take their free questionnaire, figure out if this is something that would apply for you. If it is, then they'll help you locate the closest person who could provide that screening for you. So
cool. Concrete, hands-on tips.
That's
Making
right.
the world a better place today, Dr.
That's
P.
right. Heck yeah. We're all about at least 1 or 2 less migraines because of what we do here every Tuesday, right?
That's right. That's right. Trying to reach out.
Yeah.
All right. So my contribution will be to let people know that I do teach people how to do yoga specifically for people with migraine and headaches. There are some rules that you need to follow to make it so that you can tolerate that movement. That you can't find this at your local yoga studio. So I created an online class. I teach live once a week. I am actually a certified yoga teacher too, in addition to being a neurologist. So I'm not just like faking it here. And so if that's something that you are interested in doing to learn how to manage your own neck pain, which can be such a powerful trigger for headaches, that's a big part of what I do. So I'll put the link in this post here. If you're curious, you can check it out. I'm actually running a special on it right now. It's about half price. And I would be happy to teach you how to do that. Once you know that tool, then you obviously need the services of chiropractors, acupuncture, PT, massage a lot less often. I'm not going to say it's none. And I love all of those services, but there is something empowering about knowing that if you're suffering in the middle of the night and you can't access any of that, you know what to do to make the pain go away.
Absolutely. And if there was anybody who is interested in some of those other biochemical imbalances, as I got kind of all geeky on you at the beginning part of this video, I have a list of some of those. I call it my list of 48 things. I think it's a lot now. There's like 74 or something like that on there. But you can download that as a free resource that you have so that you can kind of start working on some of those things. And then once you kind of hone in on what you have already ruled out and things that maybe you didn't even think about, such as this eye misalignment, that can give you some that can really help you hone in on some of those underlying commonalities that might be showing you where your imbalances are so you can actually fix them. So you can get that at migrainemastery.org/free resources.
All right. Hope that helps everybody. Thank you so much for being here this week. We will be live next week in Dr. P's group, and we'll be back live in this group in 2 weeks. Don't hesitate to drop a question or comment below the post. All right. Thanks, Dr. P, for being here.
You bet.
All right. Bye, everybody.